In the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, Hillary Hildebeest Clinton and her cohorts orchestrated an unthinkable plot, one that shocks obviously the conscience of not only our country, but it's an affront to the nation's democracy. And acting in concert, the defendants maliciously conspired to weave a very, very fake narrative that the Republican opponent, Donald J. Trump, was colluding with a hostile foreign sovereignty, falsifying evidence, deceiving law enforcement, and exploiting access to highly sensitive data. Things that were so incredibly outrageous and subversive and incendiary that even the events of Watergate pale in comparison. As the former Chief of Staff of Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller, also having served as the Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, Kash Patel oversaw the execution of several of President Donald Trump's top priorities, including but not limited to eliminating ISIS and al-Qaeda leadership and the safe repatriation of numerous American hostages. Kash also served as the principal deputy to the acting director of national intelligence, where he oversaw the operations of all 17 intelligence community agencies and provided the president's daily briefing, serving as the national security advisor and senior counsel for the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, where he spearheaded the investigation of the Russian Collusion Delusion and the active measures campaign to influence the 2016 presidential election, I say makes him extremely qualified for our discussion now. Let's bring in Kash. Kash Patel, welcome to Steel Truth this evening. I have got a lot of subject that I'd like to cover with you this evening. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be on the show.
Well, fantastic. So let's talk about this. I want to talk about little J6, some Durham, and of course we just had Peter Tickton on, one of President Trump's attorneys that wrote that beautiful 108-page lawsuit against Hillary Clinton and the RICO Crime Gang, as I call them. That lawsuit, it's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yeah, too long. And it's, we finally got to the point after, I was the chief investigator for Devin Nunes on the Russiagate investigation, and where we exposed all the corruption and the lies and the Democrats paying for garbage and corrupting our FBI and DOJ. There was bad actors, criminals along the way. And it took us forever to break through the DC swamp, the fake news media. And we were always right. We were just putting out the truth. It wasn't like, oh, here's some fake information. Hopefully no one catches us. That's what they did. And President Trump's lawsuit just brings this whole thing full circle. And it's a really nice master play in trying to go after the people that wronged you by breaking the law. And they can do it civilly like they've done in this case. Alina Hab's one of the lawyers. She's brilliant on the case. And they did a really nice job laying out a very complicated, what I call the biggest criminal conspiracy in presidential history. But that stuff's, there's like 25 different major players. Then there's another 50 medium-sized players, companies, groups, money. They did a fantastic job citing through the facts. And if you haven't read it, at least read the first 3 to 4 pages of the pleading, because that will tell you what happened in Russiagate. And it took me 4 years of investigating to find it, to dig it out and put it out. And it's a really good summary of it.
It's fantastic. I read all 108 pages. In fact, some of it I read over and over because it really did help solidify and paint that very clean timeline of events of what happened and who the key players are. And as I said to Peter, it reads like a great spy novel. Sadly, it's not fiction. It's reality. This is reality. And it's so crazy that people will, oh, that couldn't be real. But it's real. Mm-hmm. And it's footnoted and annotated beautifully. So kudos to all the work that you contributed and everybody on Team America, frankly, to make sure the facts were presented and that Peter had someplace to have a repository to draw from. So quite extraordinary. Now, in terms of attorney-client privilege, Peter had mentioned yesterday the attorney-client privilege between Mark Elias and, of course, Perkins Coie, which was the laundromat to funnel all this money to pay all the different sources and subsources and companies that did this Russian Collusion Delusion. Do you stand with him that attorney-client privilege is not able to stand up in court because, of course, the Perkins Coie billing, which was very detailed, will reflect the true essence of the dubious work that they paid in terms of billable hours? Will that be a good trail to uncover this and prove the conspiracy?
Yeah, look, I always said the theme when I was leading the investigation was follow the money. I told Devin we need a subpoena. We got to go after Fusion GPS. Banks don't lie. They never lie. Look, I'm a former federal prosecutor. I was a terrorism prosecutor. And before that, I was a federal public defender. So I've tried a lot of jury trials, criminal to verdict, about 60 of them. Have a lot of experience in this arena. And money never lies. Bank records never lie. Emails don't lie. These are hard evidence. And that's what John Durham's sort of been digging up and kind of following the theme that, I laid out. And that's what happens here in the civil lawsuit that we're talking about, the quote unquote RICO case. Basically, what the attorneys have done, and I believe rightly so, is say, okay, billing records are never attorney-client privilege. They're just not. You learn that on like day 2 of law school. It's payment. So there's no exception. There's no rule that covers them or shields them from getting through. Now, you have to also remember, Michael Sussman is now, Mark Elias's partner when he was at Perkins Coie running the entire Hillary Clinton campaign fraud scheme, has been indicted by John Durham, which means Mark Elias is probably not far off because John Durham is laying out this large-scale criminal conspiracy. And what he's saying in these pleadings that Durham drops once every other week or so is, Judge, the defense is totally wrong. They're not shielded by attorney-client privilege, and there's a crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege. What that means is, me as an attorney can't have a client and just say, okay, attorney-client privilege, let's go break some laws. That doesn't work. If you can use evidence to show that a crime was committed, the attorney-client privilege is vitiated. So I don't think they have a large say on that, a large leg to stand on. I think it's more judicial theatrics, so that the mainstream media will pick it up and say, oh, attorney-client privilege sounds really cool, can't break the law, to convict an individual who broke the law. And that's the exact purpose for the exception of the attorney-client privilege. So I don't think it stands.
Okay, well, good to hear. I'm glad you're backing up what Peter said. I want to do a quick sidebar here, not to over-abuse legalese here, but the lieutenant governor of New York has now been indicted. Benjamin was actually indicted. Brian Benjamin was indicted, I think, today, and there's a press conference that's going to be rolling out about that. But of course, it's an indictment on multiple counts, including bribery and honest services, wire fraud, conspiracy, 2 counts of falsification of records. This was all unsealed today. So, the question I have is with respect to President Trump. We know that the SDNY, Southern District of New York, and of course the Attorney General, Letitia, she's gone after him. You've got the Lieutenant Governor now. This is just extraordinary what we're seeing happen. Everything, of course, the projection they've been throwing on the former administration under President Trump, including the president, is really reflected in their own misdeeds and criminal activities. What do you expect to come from this, and how can President Trump leverage this to help exonerate himself and move past all this?
No, that's exactly right. Everything they said and accused President Trump and us of doing falsely, they accused us, they actually themselves have done. They've gone out and broken the law. They corrupted the Fisa Court. They illegally surveilled a candidate for president and a sitting president of the United States. They being the Hillary Clinton campaign, the corrupt officials at the FBI, Andy McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Fusion GPS. They falsified the dossier and pumped it into the court system. They are accusing us of doing similar conduct falsely, but they themselves did it. They accused us of stealing the 2016 election, but we outright won it. So this is just a hypocrisy that America can't stand about D.C. It's why people don't like Washington. And it's why Washington has no credibility left. And the only people that ride each other's credibility tails are Washington, D.C. and the mainstream media. They're each other's lapdogs, just to perpetuate false narratives that never end and to bury how wrong they had their previous story, i.e. Russiagate, i.e. the Ukraine impeachment fiasco, i.e. Anything President Trump did successfully from a national security perspective. So this case, again, as a former federal prosecutor, sealed indictments mean they had this case a while ago. Also, federal cases like this, they take years. You don't show up to court. State court cases go a lot faster. That's the main difference between state and federal court. The lieutenant governor, the number 2 officer in charge of the state of New York, has been federally indicted with a wire fraud scheme. That is hard stuff to do because you are collecting bank records. That's what wire fraud is. You're going after monetary transactions over banking ecosystems. And they're saying he did it for an unlawful purpose, and he was bribed to do so. This is pretty big stuff. I mean, look, they accused Trump of having a connection to Russia because of a non-existent Alpha Bank server, which is what Sussman's indicted for.
Right.
They accused Trump of colluding with Russia and Putin because he had a phone call with Putin and the Ukrainians, which turned out to be completely fine. And now we have an actual sitting elected official who is responsible for overseeing a lot of the actions taken by the state attorney general of New York into President Trump. He himself is indicted. I mean, this story, it can't be any bigger. And the mainstream media will wash over it, just say, oh, nothing to see here, probably take a plea and, go to prison. This guy is going to prison.
Right.
the lieutenant governor. And, you just can't highlight that enough. But of course, all they want to talk about is, Manafort or,
with a fabricated black ledger.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we've got a homicidal ex-governor there, a homicidal maniac. Andrew Cuomo is what I always refer to him as. He is. He's a homicidal maniac. What he did to the elderly population in New York is nothing short of true homicide on mass level. It's by the tens of thousands. I want to focus in a little bit on, of course, this Russian collusion, the Alpha Bank story. Named defendants like Jaffe and others helped plant evidence in the, with the Alpha Bank and fabricate this whole thing. Through a marketing company that Trump's organization used totally outside the campaign and nothing to do with the campaign. But they fabricated all this. And they took it one step further, Kash. They were doing it while he was president in the Oval Office. They were hacking into servers there. Do we know exactly who helped facilitate that hack in the White House?
I don't know. I can only surmise based on my experience running Russiagate and then from my time in the intel community and former federal public defender time, is that John Durham isn't unraveling this Mickey Mouse conspiracy. He's unwinding this huge criminal conspiracy, and he's doing it with documented proof. And one of the things he issued was that you just brought up, and this has sort of been overshadowed by the mainstream media. The Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign, paid an indicted lawyer, Michael Sussman, to go to the intelligence community, where I was the deputy director of national intelligence under President Trump, the number 2 officer, to obtain a secret engagement and agreement so that company, that private company on behalf of the Hillary Clinton campaign, could go and mine data at the most secure network on planet Earth, the White House. That is absolutely shocking. And to me, from my experience in the intelligence community and as a terrorism prosecutor, you don't get access to the White House unless you either hack it, which is impossible, or what John Durham said was they obtained a, quote, sensitive agreement. That means someone at the NSA, the IC, whatever it is, came in and said, oh, we're going to pay you money. We're going to contract you to do this work while President Trump is sitting in office. And I want to know how high that goes and who authorized that contract at the NSA and how much money the Clintons doled out and how much money the government paid Jaffe and all the tech executives to obtain that access. That is just a shocking bastardization of justice and the law for no reason, for made up excuses to spy on a sitting president. And we now know, thanks to Durham, that it was totally made up. And that Sussman and his cronies literally said, we'll fake the information just to make it look like there's an inference between Donald Trump and Russia. It's literally something you can't write in a spy novel. You couldn't even come up with this sort of fiction. And if you tried to write a book or make a movie out of this, it'd probably be a 10-part series because it's so much, much criminality. It's and look, I dive into this stuff extensively on my show, Cash's Corner on Epoch Times. I've done like 4 Durham deep dives. Yes. I just did one last week with the most watched one. So if you're bored and need help falling asleep, check out Cash's Corner on Epoch.
No, they're good.
Go all the way down to that hole.
Cash, never boring, always totally on the edge of my seat. I love your stuff on Cash's Corner. I think it's fantastic. I'm so glad you have that platform, truly, because if it was not for folks like the Epoch Times and what we do here and other great new media companies, there would be no truth out there. So let me just ask you this, because I'm going to go a little deeper here and a little darker, but besides planting fake evidence of transactions with Alpha Bank, what other evidence might they have planted, considering what we know about Hillary Clinton per the 500-page OIG Horowitz email report with that footnote? I can't remember the page, but we're going to get it up here. With that footnote, the Clinton Foundation and crimes against children. What might other serious evidence might they have tried to pin on this president?
I mean, I don't put anything past them, anything past these people. I mean, the Clinton Global Initiative was basically a slush fund so they could fly around the world and do whatever they want, whenever they wanted, by saying, we're going to hire, we're raising money from Bill Gates and all these other rich bazillionaires, these guys that hobnobbed with Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, no big deal. And then they used it for their own benefit. So the Clintons have no credibility. But what I want to do is goad Hillary Clinton to running for president again, because it would be awesome if Donald Trump faced her in 2024. So I'm hoping that she does. And I think she has an ego big enough where she will literally be like, this is what she's saying to herself. There's no way I lost in 2016. I should have been the candidate in 2020. I'm going to run in 2024. Her ego can't take it. And because if she runs, that's the only way we're going to have mainstream media focus and scrutiny on the Clinton Foundation to the extent that you're calling for. So we can find out the levels of depravity and criminality that this organization has perpetuated on the American public for decades, literally, and get to the bottom of the actual Russiagate hoax, which is it started and ends with Hillary Clinton and her campaign. That's where the money is.
Yes, that's exactly where the money is. And of course, they leverage the what I call the unlimited prosecutorial purse of the DOJ and all the cronies there, including extra characters that are outside the DOJ, Nellie Orr notwithstanding. But of course, they were able to obtain these extrajudicial FISA warrants, which basically created and started and instigated the Mueller investigation. Are there any FISA judges, specifically maybe Rudy Contreras or Rosemary Collyer, who are complicit in this activity? And what is Supreme Court Justice John Roberts' responsibility as he is actually over the appointment of these FISA court judges? Because Rudy Contreras disappeared, and he was very friendly with the Lovebirds, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, as per their text messages.
Yeah, so look, the FISA court, as a terrorism prosecutor, I went before and applied for a lot of FISA applications and have extensive familiarity there. The FISA judges are appointed by the Supreme Court, specifically the Chief Justice John Roberts in this case, to a rotating term. I believe it's 1 to 2 years, and they come into D.C. for like a month-long shift at a time. It's any federal judge at the district court level can come in and sit on the FISA court. And we went to the Department of Justice with the Nunes memo, armed with the evidence that we obtained from the FBI and their own documents in the Department of Justice. You know, the Broussard 302s, the Steele contact sheets where we showed the criminality of their conduct, the suppression of the evidence and exculpatory information by the FBI when presenting something to the FISA court. These are extremely sensitive warrants and almost impossible to get. You have to be completely 100% right. And they were 100% intentionally wrong. And we wrote to them when Devin Nunes was chairman. We said in a classified letter, can't go into the substance, but we said, hey, you guys need to look at this. You're Article 3 judges. You're responsible for knowing what should have been presented to you. And you have an opportunity now as Article 3 judges to say, hey, FBI, come in and report to us. Why does this say X and this says Y? I want to know. Did you lie to me? They have that authority. You know what the Rosemary Collyer and the rest of the FISA court judges did when we told them about it? They said, basically, nothing to see here. Go talk to the Department of Justice.
There you go.
Because there's no retribution for an Article 3 judge, a federal district court judge, excuse me, because they're appointed for life. And here's the one thing federal judges hate more than anything else, being reversed. I've been before hundreds of judges, and they do not want to be told by someone else that they got it wrong. Now, 2 years later, after the Inspector General report by Horowitz validated our entire investigation, the department finally went in and reversed 2 of the FISA warrants that they issued against President Trump. Too little, too late, because now the information I wanted public from those 2 FISA warrants, the Department of Justice said, oh, we invalidated them, so we can't give that information to the public anymore. So there's a shocking amount of information, and some of I think the biggest travesties that the department and the FBI perpetuated on the FISA court are now hidden forever, not because they are, classified or unclassified or any of that nonsense, but because the court order prohibits the release of the underlying information because we did our job too well, is what they're basically saying. So there's no way to hold these judges accountable except to shame them in public, and you got to say their names, and you got to go out there and call them out by name, and then force people to read about them and say, this is what these Article 3 lifetime judges who are appointed to the most sensitive court on planet Earth did to our Department of Justice and FBI and allowed a president to be illegally surveilled. They allowed it.
So you want to name any names right now since you have a public platform? I mean, when General Flynn was indicted, Rudy Contreras kind of like magically disappeared. Is there anybody you want to throw on the fire?
I mean,
right now?
the only two I remember are Rosemary Collyer and Rudy Contreras being the judges. I can't remember off the top of my head who the other 2 judges were, or if one of them sat for multiple warrants. But people should go and make requests of our letters to the FISA court. That's public. Ask for that information and be like, and the Department of Justice wrote us a classified response in which they got it wrong too. The department came back to us and said, oh, you guys are morons. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And we said, and of course the IG would later come out and say, actually, they had it all right. They had the Broussard 302s right. They had the Steele dossier source reporting right. They had the money line right. They had everything right. And this is how bad the department got it. They covered for these Article 3 judges. They covered under Rod Rosenstein, who I think is the worst deputy attorney general in U.S. history. He was a Trump appointee who came out. He signed one of the FISA warrants, because that's what an attorney general has to do, is come in and authorize this warrant and say everything in here is credible and accurate. While President Trump was in the Oval Office, Rod Rosenstein signed it. He allowed this investigation to continue when he could have stopped it, and he prevented the release of public documents that we, Devin Nunes and I, wanted to be made public, so the American people can have knowledge of what happened, and then there can be some accountability. Rod Rosenstein, maybe next to Gina Haspel and Chris Wray, are the worst of the worst when it came to the FISA-gate scandal. And there's probably 40% of the documents we still have not made public because of the actions of Rod Rosenstein, who, by the way, agreed to wear a wire against President Trump with his buddy Andy McCabe so he could be removed from office under the 25th Amendment. These are the types of heathens, basically, that think the mission exists to serve their ego. And they forget that you exist to serve the mission when you sign up for it.
Right. All right. I want to thank you, Kash. It's so great to get all this out, hearing it from you. And you're summarizing it so eloquently. I appreciate that. I want to shift this a little bit because back in December of 2020, I had the opportunity in the Trump Hotel to sit down with Patrick Byrne and Sidney Powell, who was also in the room at the time. They were working very closely together. But Patrick unleashed something that we broke at the time that none of the mainstream media would even touch with a 10-foot pole. So it's regarding Operation Snow Globe. I want to play this clip and come back and get your comment.
And this is the key to understanding what's happened in America. They told me, this is word for word, Patrick, what's really going on is this. President Obama has his people across the federal bureaucracy at this point, but especially the Department of Justice. Hillary Clinton is going to be president for 8 years, and nothing's going to change that. But think of there being a Bunsen burner within the Department of Justice. That evidence about the 2 bribes you were part of gathering is going to be sitting on the Bunsen burner. And the hand on the Bunsen burner is going to be one of Barack Obama's people. If Hillary's a good girl and defends Obamacare, that flame stays low. If she's a bad girl and thinks for herself, it's going to get turned up high. That way, Barack Obama is going to manage Hillary Clinton for the 8 years she's president, and then she's going to step down, and Michelle's going to run. And Patrick, that's the plan. That came out of the lips of a federal agent. It was confirmed to me this spring. The Durham Investigation that plan was called the Operation Snow Globe. That was Brendan Obama's name for it. Snow Globe, they were trying to get Hillary to step into a snow globe. I'm looking for a prop. A snow globe that anytime they wanted, they could then pick up and shake for 8 years. My bribe was the bait to get her to step into the snow globe. That's all from it. This isn't a theory. I'm the guy in the room. I'm acknowledging I took part in all this, and I thought I was helping them conduct federal law enforcement. It turned out that I was helping them set up Hillary Clinton for a deep state to control her. And that's why, and I came up public a year ago with some pictures that showed me with this Russian redhead, Maria Butina, lovely woman, that said, and so I'm saying this entire thing, this last 5 years, has been a coup. It was from Obama against Hillary, that when Trump won in a fluke, it got morphed into the Russian Collusion Delusion. And I say that as the guy that had romancing Maria and bribing Hillary Clinton. So I'm about as involved in this as you can get, and I promise you that's exactly what happened.
So, Kash, are you familiar with this story?
I'm not really familiar with that story. I've heard about it in the past. I don't have any direct knowledge of it. And, my problem is I still have a clearance and I can't talk about certain programs unless I want the FBI to give the FBI a reason to knock on my door, which, after the January 6th subpoena fiasco, I'm looking to avoid.
Okay, very fair answer. I will accept and appreciate that. Let's talk about January 6th, because clearly that was massive FBI entrapment. Where's Ray Epps? There's just so much we can talk about there. I sat in the Coy Griffin Cowboys for Trump trial several weeks ago where Judge McFadden gave him a split decision, one for trespassing, even though they're 2 star prosecutorial witnesses. One was a Secret Service agent, one was Capitol Police. Neither could agree on what was the restricted area, where it was, and the judge still found Coy Griffin guilty of being in a restricted area, even though video shows him among with 10,000 or more other people standing in that same area. Nobody else arrested at this point. Nancy Pelosi, I'm sure, salivating at the thought of it. But he was found not guilty for inciting violence, which was good. Next week, another gentleman who actually entered the Capitol was found not guilty of anything. So, again, same courtroom, same judge. What are your thoughts on J6? Because when you look at this video, we'll play while we're talking, there's a video from inside the I think it's just inside the rotunda in the Capitol, where the fire doors, clearly you have to be pushed from the inside to open them to get out. Thoughts here on your discussions with the J6 House on Select Committee?
Yeah. So look, I mean, as a former public defender who argued countless times, thousands of times for bond for people who have criminal records, for people with lengthy criminal histories, because that's what due process calls for. I think it's a shocking obliteration of due process that there are over 60 individuals who are charged with nonviolent felonies with no criminal history, and some are elderly, who have been detained since January 6th, since their arrest, without bond by federal judges. I just don't understand what happened to the liberal cause of due process, and it's selective application against January 6th defendants. That's one of my biggest problems, with my past being a public defender and a prosecutor. I don't understand what happened to the constitutional due process rights.
Right.
Beyond that, there's just so much to it. I was chief of staff at the Department of Defense, and, I've said this before, in order for the National Guard to lawfully be employed and deployed, two things have to happen. One, you need a presidential authorization, and two, you need the head of the local government, governor, mayor, Nancy Pelosi, Capitol Police, to come in and request National Guard, because National Guard's men and women are doctors, lawyers, nurses, cops, educators in our communities. We have to pull them out, kit them up, equip them, train them, employ, and then deploy them. That takes a little bit of time. On January 4th, I was in the Oval Office with the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Chief of Staff to the President of the United States. And we were working on some sensitive operations. And President Trump authorized, unrelated to what we were working on, we started talking about January 6th, and he said, you guys can have up to 10 to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women. We said, check, thanks to the Commander-in-Chief. We were now authorized by the President. The first part of the law was satisfied. Then we went to Mayor Bowser, who runs Washington, D.C.,
right.
Basically equivalent to a governor. And then we also went to the Capitol Police, who report to Nancy Pelosi, and we said, the President authorized 10 to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women in Washington, D.C. Do you want them? They literally said no. Mayor Bowser, in writing, and it's in our material that we put out by the Department of Defense and the IG's report at the Department of Defense, Mayor Bowser's letter refusing to accept that level of troop employment and deployment for the National Guard. Nancy Pelosi and the Capitol Police, same thing. They refused. So that is a fact you would think that the Unselect Committee on January 6th would want to focus on when they subpoenaed me as the first witness for their whatever you call this. It's Russiagate investigation, which we ran, is how you do a congressional investigation, and then there's what they're doing. It
Right.
cost me $160,000 in lawyers to deal with this nonsense. I went in and got interrogated for 6 hours. No problem. I can take it. Part of your duty as serving is to go before Congress and report on what you did. What's not appropriate is for the Select Committee on January 6th to spend more than 50% of the time asking me about Afghanistan, about Syria, about Iraq, about
Right.
side conversations with the president. I said, don't you guys want the facts of January 6th, when me, as the highest ranking civilian at the Department of Defense, and the authorizations regarding National Guard, and where there was a breakdown by Mayor Bowser and Nancy Pelosi, they could not have been less interested
Of course
in
not.
actual January 6th matters.
No.
And so, it's another reason why people don't have faith in Congress's ability to conduct oversight investigations, because they've become so political. And I tried to go in there and, do it for the right reasons, and it costs a lot of money. And there's a lot of people who've been subpoenaed since me who don't have the ability to, go in there and speak to the events. And also there's a monetary component of it's not cheap going before Congress. You have to have lawyers, you have to have attorneys. So, we're trying to use the Fight with Cash Foundation to try to help some of those people too, if we can. We're trying to expand its purpose beyond.
Great.
We stood it up for just fundraising to help people who've been defamed. We just filed a lawsuit 3 weeks ago on behalf of a young man named Daniel Bostic related to January 6th. Some crazy outfit actually maligned this great American maliciously and lied, we think, and we filed a lawsuit on his behalf. And that's what Fight with Cash, that's the entire purpose. Go
That's
out and raise
fantastic
money.
work.
If you've been defamed, let us know. We will pay for your lawsuit so you can clear your name. and have your day in court. And we're going to try to help more and more people related to the January 6th events as we can.
Worthy cause, Kash. Truly it is. I can't thank you enough. You're a great American. I'm going to let you go with a quick word salad association game. I'm going to give you a name. You give me a word that comes to mind. Durham.
Righteous justice.
Hillary.
Crook.
Burn.
Oh, man. I don't think I have one word for that.
Trump.
The best.
All right.
I mean, that's kind of it. But here's a cool thing. I'm finally on social media now for the first time in my life. So if you guys aren't, get on Truth Social.
Follow you.
And follow me at Kash. I mean, this is the place to be. The engagement is off the charts. I don't really know what I'm doing on there yet because I've never done this social media thing or whatever. But get over there, follow me at Kash, and I appreciate being on your show. And if you can support fightwithkash.com, we really appreciate all the small dollar donations.
You got it. Kash Patel, incredible American. Thank you so much for your service to our country, and it continues in your nonprofit work to help those that are being unmercifully politically persecuted by what I call the domestic terror threat in this country, which is our overgrown, bureaucratic, monolithic federal government. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I appreciate being with you.
All right, tremendous.